There we go. All right. Okay, guys, I stopped in the middle of a section again. This book does not have chapters, so I'm like doing the best I can for pacing-wise, or pacing purposes. Jeez, it's just like verbal diarrhea all day long. All right, so what happened yesterday was that Santiago was about to take off in a caravan, and he met an Englishman, just a guy from England, and he was on a bench, and he was talking about why he wants to go in a caravan and travel across the Sahara Desert. He's an alchemist, which means he's kind of like a philosopher, kind of a religious guy, but also kind of a chemist. And so he's someone who believes in the power of transforming natural materials to in search of like the elixir of life, that everlasting, immortal, potion. And he believes that exists. And he has a friend who lives in an oasis, or he heard about an alchemist who has all of the answers that he's looking for. And so that's where he's going. And so that's kind of on, for him, that's his personal legend. And Santiago was embarrassed, but he admitted that he's going to the pyramids to find his treasure. And so off they go in the caravan together. And he was kind of sad about leaving his sheep behind and leaving behind a life that he knew as a shepherd. But he said, I've learned so much from them, and now it's time to move on. So there's evidence of growth in his character. Okay, so I'll begin today on the middle of page 74. He thought of the merchant's daughter and was sure that she had probably married, perhaps to a baker. Oh, I think I read that part yesterday. So he's thinking about the life he's leaving behind. So sheep and merchant's daughter included, because he had a wicked crush on her. The desert was all sand in some stretches and rocky in others. When the caravan was blocked by a boulder, it had to go around it. If there was a large rocky area, they had to make a major detour. If the sand was too fine for the animals' hooves, they sought a way where the sand was more substantial. In some places, the ground was covered with the salt of dried-up lakes. The animals balked at such places, and the camel drivers were forced to dismount and unburden their charges. The drivers carried the freight themselves over such treacherous footing and then reloaded the camels. If a guide were to fall ill or die, the camel drivers would draw lots and appoint a new one. But all this happened for one basic reason. No matter how many detours and adjustments it made, the caravan moved toward the same compass point. Once obstacles were overcome, it returned to its course, sighting on a star that indicated the location of the oasis. When the people saw that star shining in the morning sky, they knew they were on the right course toward water, palm trees, shelter, and other people. It was only the Englishman who was unaware of all this. He was, for the most part, immersed in reading his books. The boy, too, had his book, and he had tried to read it during the first few days of the journey, but he found it much more interesting to observe the caravan and listen to the wind. As soon as he had learned to know his camel better and to establish a relationship with him, he threw the book away. Although the boy had developed a superstition that each time he opened the book, he would learn something important, he decided it was an unnecessary burden. He became friendly with the camel driver who traveled alongside him. At night, as they sat around the fire, the boy related to the driver his adventures as a shepherd. So I'm sure they have a lot in common. Even though it's just one camel and not a bunch of sheep, they are in charge of an animal. So, yeah. During one of these conversations, the driver told of his own life. I used to live near El Karamam, he said. I had my orchard, my children, and a life that would change not at all until I died. One year, when the crop was the best ever, we all went to Mecca, and I satisfied the only unmet obligation in my life. I could die happily, and that made me feel good. One day the earth began to tremble and the Nile overflowed its banks. It was something that I thought could happen only to others, never to me. My neighbors feared they would lose all of their olive trees in the flood, and my wife was afraid that we would lose our children. I thought that everything I owned would be destroyed. The land was ruined, and I had to find some other way to earn a living, so now I'm a camel driver. But that disaster taught me to understand the word of Allah. Allah is what Muslims call God. People need not fear the unknown if they are capable of achieving what they need and want. We are afraid of losing what we have, whether it's our life or our possessions and property. But this fear evaporates when we understand that our life stories and the history of the world were written by the same hand. Sometimes the caravan met with one another. One always had something that the other needed, as if everything were indeed written by one hand. As they sat around the fire, the camel drivers exchanged information about windstorms and told stories about the desert. At other times, mysterious hooded men would appear. They were Bedouins who did surveillance along the caravan route. They provided warnings about thieves and barbarian tribes. They came in silence and departed the same way, dressed in black garments that showed only their eyes. One night, a camel driver came to the fire where the Englishman and the boy were sitting. There are rumors of tribal wars, he told them. The three fell silent. The boy noted that there was a sense of fear in the air, even though no one said anything. Once again, he was experiencing the language without words, the universal language. The Englishman asked if they were in danger. Once you get into the desert, there's no going back, said the camel driver. And when you can't go back, you have to worry only about the best way of moving forward. The rest is up to Allah, including the danger. And he concluded by saying the mysterious word maktub. Maktub is what the crystal merchant had said to the boy Santiago, and it does have meaning and significance here. It just means it is written. You should pay more attention to the caravan, the boy said to the Englishman after the camel driver had left. We make a lot of detours, but we're always heading for the same destination. And you ought to read more about the world, answered the Englishman. Books are like caravans in that respect. The immense collection of people and animals began to travel faster. The days had always been silent, but now even the nights when the travelers were accustomed to talking about the fires had also become quiet. And one day the leader of the caravan made the decision that the fires should no longer be lighted so as not to attract attention to the caravan. The travelers adopted the practice of arranging the animals in a circle at night, sleeping together in the center as protection against the nocturnal cold. And the leader posted armed sentinels at the fringes of the group. The Englishman was unable to sleep one night. He called to the boy, and they took a walk along the dunes surrounding the encampment. There was a full moon, and the boy told the Englishman the story of his life. The Englishman was fascinated with the part about the progress achieved at the crystal shop after the boy began working there. That's the principle that governs all things, he said. In alchemy, it's called the soul of the world. When you want something with all your heart, that's when you are closest to the soul of the world. It's always a positive force. He also said that it was not just a human gift, that everything on the face of the earth had a soul, whether mineral, vegetable, or animal, or even just a simple thought. Everything on earth is being continuously transformed because the earth is alive. It has a soul. We are part of that soul. So we rarely recognize that it is working for us. But in the crystal shop, you probably realized that even the glasses were collaborating in your success. The boy thought about that for a while as he looked at the moon and the bleached sands. I have watched the caravan as it crossed the desert, he said. The caravan and the desert speak the same language, and it's for that reason that the desert allows the crossing. It's going to test the caravans every step to see if it's in time, and if it is, we will make it to the oasis. If either of us had joined this caravan based only on personal courage, but without understanding that language, this journey would have been much more difficult. They stood there, looking at the moon. That's the magic of omens, said the boy. I've seen how the guides read the signs in the desert and how the soul of the caravan speaks to the soul of the desert. The Englishman said, I better pay more attention to the caravan. And I'd better read your books, said the boy. All right, we got a little page break here. They were strange books. They spoke about Mercury, salt, dragons, and kings, and he didn't understand any of it. But there was one idea that seemed to repeat itself throughout all the books. All things are the manifestation of one thing only. In one of the books, he learned that the most important text in the literature of alchemy contained only a few lines and had been inscribed on the surface of an emerald. It's the Emerald Tablet, said the Englishman, proud that he might teach something to the boy. Well then, why do we need all these books? The boy asked. So that we can understand those few lines, the Englishman answered, without appearing really to believe what he had said. The book that most interested the boy told the stories of the famous alchemists. They were men who had dedicated their entire lives to the purification of metals in their laboratories. They believed that if a metal were heated for many years, it would free itself of all its individual properties, and what was left would be the soul of the world. This soul of the world allowed them to understand anything on the face of the earth. because it was the language of which all things communicated. They called that discovery the master work. It was part liquid and part solid. Can't you just observe men and omens in order to understand the language? The boy asked. You have a mania for simplifying everything, answered the Englishman, irritated. Alchemy is a serious discipline. Every step has to be followed exactly as it was followed by the masters. The boy learned that the liquid part of the masterwork was called the elixir of life, and that it cured all illnesses. It also kept the alchemist from growing old, and that solid part was called the philosopher's stone. It's not easy to find the philosopher's stone, said the Englishman. The alchemists spent years in the laboratories observing the fire that purified the metals. They spent so much time close to the fire that gradually they gave up the vanities of the world. They discovered that the purification of the metals had led to a purification of themselves. The boy thought about the crystal merchant. He had said that it was a good thing for the boy to clean the crystal pieces so that he could free himself from negative thoughts. The boy was becoming more and more convinced that alchemy could be learned in one's daily life. Also, said the Englishman, the philosopher's stone has a fascinating property. A small sliver of the stone can transform large quantities of metal into gold. Having heard that, the boy became even more interested in alchemy. He thought that with some patience, he'd be able to transform everything into gold. He read the lives of the various people who had succeeded in doing so. Helveticus Elias, Falconelli, and Gerber, maybe? They were fascinating stories. Each of them lived out his personal legend to the end. They traveled, spoke with wise men, performed miracles for the incredulous, and owned the philosopher's stone and the elixir of life. But when the boy wanted to learn how to achieve the master work, he became completely lost. They were just drawings, coded instructions, and obscure texts. I'm going to pause there today, 82, right at the page break. Just some thoughts. So I've mentioned that this book is a bit complicated, and it has a lot of allusions to literary, like other famous literary works, but also religious texts as well, like the Bible. And that's on purpose. I think what they're talking about, that language that sheeps understand, camels understand, humans understand. It's not words. It's more just the inner workings of the world. I think it's just what they're tuning into, these omens. They're not signs. They're not omens. They're just being really mindful about their environment, and they're just kind of taking note. They're noticing things. And I think maybe that's this like magical thing that Santiago is like searching for. When he says that he's going to find a treasure, I'm starting to doubt that the treasure actually exists. I think that maybe the treasure is just him meeting these people, going on this journey, and learning a lot about himself in the process. But who the heck knows? I also haven't read this book before, so we'll see. All right, I'm going to stop the recording, but I am going to stay on if you have questions about the assignment for today. All right. So sorry, I hit the wrong button. Still recording. There we go.